Today I wanted to talk about tracking your progress. So if you haven't watched my previous videos already, go back. I'm talking fat loss here. So look at the previous videos. I've talked about how to get into a scenario where you are losing fat and preserving muscle. The ideal scenario if someone's looking to lose fat. It's all well and good knowing the kind of how to get into a fat loss scenario, but we need to track it. Are we actually getting there? Is this happening? Is this working? There's things that the body can do that we don't realize is happening, and if we're not tracking our progression correctly, then for all we know, we're not losing the fat that we're wanting to lose. So it's all easier said than done. But with that in mind, what I tend to advise people to do is to take photos weekly. So same day of the week, every week take one photo, or well, take a few, front on, side on, and also your back. You know, sometimes people don't realize they're losing fat off their back. The body will lose fat where it chooses to lose, and that's just purely down to genetics. We can't choose where we lose this fat. So that's why it's quite important to get all angles with these photos. Use a full length mirror, go to the toilet beforehand, don't eat or drink beforehand. And then week to week, compare those photos. Now, me personally, I've done this in the past, and it's amazing how motivational that is when you actually start to see these changes. Yes, you might have the knowledge, the calorie deficit, the protein intake, the weight training, but it can be hard to see those protocols working without this proof. And when I compared personally, like week 1 to week 3, I could see a change. I didn't even think there was a change at all. So that was so motivating, and that just kind of carried me on through the rest of the weeks, knowing that although I'm a bit hungry, it's working. It's nice. Another really kind of healthier of the methods is just clothing. You might notice your clothing getting that little bit looser. You know, again, using myself as an example, I know I've got like a pair of tight jeans that when I was a lot bigger were hard to get into, and then as I started losing weight, losing fat I should say, that's when I started to feel like, oh, hang on, I can get these jeans on a little tighter. A little easier. I know I'm going the right way. So I'm sure out there you have a pair of tight jeans, or you know, a dress you can't fit into, that sort of thing. Use that as a guide to, am I going the right way? Now, those are the first 2 and the best methods in my opinion for the average gym goer. The next few I'm not so keen on the average gym goer doing, but I'm going to mention them and then we can kind of consider them still. Scales do work. They're just a tool in the toolkit that help us guide our kind of tracking devices and what we're thinking is going the right way, and we can kind of help to confirm that with scales, but they're not the be all or end all. It's one of those things where using the photos, using the clothing, and using scales, we can say, well, if I've lost weight, I've most likely lost fat because looking at my photos, I'm more defined, and looking at my clothing, I fit into it easier. Now looking at the scales, I've lost a little bit of weight. Chances are that's fat. That's essentially what scales are going to confirm or help to confirm. The problem I have with scales is that so many people hold the numbers that what they say so emotionally, and it can make you make poor decisions based off of that number when you have looked at those photos and you have fitted into your clothing better, and those photos you're appearing like you've lost some fat, yet you get on the scales and they don't read the right number to you or what you think is the right number. Then all of a sudden you've thrown out all your good work and you said, right, bugger it, it's not working. When really it was working, but you've held that number too closely to your heart. You've held it too closely, too emotionally, and we need to detach from that. So if you are someone who holds that number on the scales too emotionally, I get them to throw them out. Don't bother with scales. Clothing and photos are enough to track. So if you are someone who can weigh themselves rationally and understand that it is just another progress tool or tracking tool, then what I would suggest is you're going to be a bit meticulous about this. You're going to weigh yourself in the morning, after going to the toilet, before eating and drinking. Then daily, you'll take your weight, and then over the week, divide that by 7, and that will give you your mean, I think. Anyway, and then what you can do is take your weight per week that you've worked out into a mean, and then take it monthly. And you can probably safely say, this is how much I weighed over that month, because your weight is going to fluctuate. Your weight fluctuates even on an hourly basis, let alone daily, let alone weekly. So normally I would suggest your weight is always going to be a range, which is why I like to take the mean, especially weekly means. Maybe monthly means aren't as meaningful, but you can kind of take your weekly mean and take the lowest one and the highest one, and that's your range. That's probably how much you weigh between. And of course, women's weight is going to fluctuate way more than men's does, just taking into account menstruation cycle. You know, that is going to change how much water you retain, that sort of thing. So you have to bear that in mind, and this is why daily weigh-ins are what I generally suggest, because you don't know if you're weighing yourself on a heavy day or a light day. So again, if you're someone who gets too obsessed with those numbers, get rid of them, because you have to be meticulous, unfortunately. Body fat percentage is another metric that I think the average gym goer just doesn't need, so don't bother. I don't bother advising people about this. However, if you insist on measuring your body fat percentage, this is what I tend to advise. Only use the devices that measure from your hand to your foot, because then at least you get a long portion of your body, because electricity travels the shortest distance it possibly can. So if you're standing on some weighing scales and they're saying, hey, this is your body fat, and it's only taking it from your feet, it's going to measure your legs. So that percentage it comes out with is just of your legs. And then even when you do get an accurate one, you know, again, from your hand to your foot measure, what you'll find is there are going to be some inherent inaccuracies anyway. However, these inaccuracies are consistent. So although the number might not necessarily be your true body fat percentage, if you've been measuring yourself meticulously like you would with the scales, and you've lost 2% according to your machine that measures hand to foot, you can probably say you've lost around 2%. What it doesn't mean is, if it says that you've gone from 10% to 8%, for all you know, you didn't start at 10%, but because of this consistent inaccuracy, you have at least probably lost about 2% of your body fat. Also, do take into account hydration levels massively influence that percentage number. As with weighing scales, don't get too attached to the number that the body fat percentage suggests that you are. So to summarize, clothing and photos, that's the way forward for your average gym goer. If you are really wanting to kind of get another measuring device in, okay, go with scales, don't get obsessed with the numbers. And if you want to do body fat, get an accurate measuring machine that goes from hand to foot measures. And that's only really appropriate for someone who is interested perhaps in bikini or physique or bodybuilding competitions, because you need to know if you are losing kind of smaller measures of fat. I hope that has all made sense. Thanks for watching.